Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for your time. I want to welcome you to this public meeting on the draft congestion management process being produced by the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle Metropolitan Planning Organization. We'll just call it the MPO for short. We are recording this meeting to help ensure that we don't miss any questions or comments as we continue through the public comment period and refining the draft as it exists now. Next slide, please. So before we get too much further, just want to do introductions to folks from my organization as well as our consulting firm, Michael Baker, who's assisting us with developing this congestion management process. So my name is Matt Molinax, and I'm the executive director of the MPO. And then Michaela, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then Jim and Dan.
Yeah, hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Michaela McDonough, and I am the MPO's transportation planner.
Hello, I'm Jim Frazier. I'm the project manager of our project team.
And I'm Dan Sikaris here. I'll be helping Matt here with this presentation and working with Jim on the project.
Great, thank you. All right, next slide, please. Yep. So just real quickly before we go too much further, some folks who are joining us this evening may be hearing about the MPO for the first time. Some may be well versed in what MPOs are. So I'll just say that MPOs, there's about 400 MPOs across the country, and they're created wherever the U.S. Census designates an urban area of more than 50,000 people. And so the Hagerstown Eastern Panhandle MPO is the MPO designated for Berkeley and Jefferson counties in West Virginia, as well as Washington County, Maryland. We were first designated in 1996 around the Hagerstown area. So what that means is that we're in charge, well, not in charge, we are federally designated and funded to carry out the metropolitan transportation planning process as it's described in U.S. Code or in the 1962 Federal Highway Aid Act. All right. So the congestion management process, now you know what MPO is. We have that report that's up in its draft form for public review and comment. We start our public comment period May 20th. It runs through June 20th. And the purpose of this public meeting is to give a formal presentation and provide an overview of the congestion management process, or what we'll call the CMP. Next slide, please. So the role of the CMP and the report is itself, its role with the MPO fits into 5 areas. So the first is that the CMP is going to support our long-range transportation plan. This is something that we're federally required to produce every 4 to 5 years that forecasts population and employment growth and those effects on the future transportation system in the area, looking out to a 25-year horizon. So this work on congestion specifically will help inform the next long-range plan that we work on. This also helps target engagement with stakeholders and the public on congestion issues, such as yourselves this evening. We're going to talk about some of the comments we've received to date, as well as the public survey results that we got from the survey we did last November and December. It helps us to document the process of looking at congestion and congestion management. What are the data and the tools that we use for monitoring and reporting? And those data and tools for the fourth one help identify what the priority congestion locations should be today and for future evaluation. For evaluation, we're talking about what strategies might be able to be implemented to improve congestion in the area. And then finally, it sets the stage for the coordination of those strategies. These are when you start to look at some of the areas and intersections that we've identified, I think you're going to find some of the usual suspects for those who live and work and play in and around the area. And so requires a good bit of coordination as a result of that with our state and federal as well as local partners. Okay. All right, next slide, please. So what's in the CMP report? So when you download the PDF, it could be a bit daunting, but the bulk of the document only encompasses around 40-ish pages. And then there's 5 appendices that augment the report. So first off, we acknowledge the study committee that we worked on, who came from, again, various, it could be highway folks, it could be law enforcement. We had folks from public transit involved at various levels of government, as well as some private folks that we worked with, private companies such as River Riders and Harper's Ferry to help us craft this document. We document the process steps that we went through, the results of our public survey, what the tools are that we use to assess congestion, how our trends and national performance measures look when compared to each other, how we define and prioritize congestion locations, the mapping products that we created to help highlight and bring attention to those locations, how they're evaluated, how we assess strategies, and then how we are going to move into the future to enhance congestion management and integrate that into existing planning and programming processes. Dan's going to get into some of this, but you see the appendices have a lot to do with the information that was collected, a lot of data, including traffic signal data, and then you'll see what we call corridor profiles for all the priority areas that we've identified in this draft report. Okay, next slide, please. And then if there's time or a desire, we could bring this up, but in addition to the PDF, the document or the report, we put together using software called StoryMap, which creates an online scrollable and interactive executive summary. Really can get to the meat and potatoes of the congestion management process. So there's links to this up on our website, which is herpympo.com. And we can provide that link in the chat too for anyone who's interested. But this really helps you maybe navigate the document and has some embedded maps, some embedded images and tables that really pop that may versus maybe what some might consider reading a somewhat dry document. So we just want to let folks know that that's out there as well to help you access this congestion management process. Okay, next slide. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Sakaris to go through the CMP components. Dan?
Yeah, and then what I'm just going to hit on a couple, you have the key items I call the CMP highlights and just give you a little overview of what the congestion management process is and what's in the report that Matt had just talked about. When we talk about congestion management and the process that we go through, this chart just kind of gives you a feeling of the types of things that we're looking at. Certainly, as Matt moves forward, we want to think about just looking at regional trends. You know, how much congestion do we have within the region? How is it changing year to year? And kind of keeping track of that as we move forward. There's a lot of, you know, certainly in the transportation planning world, performance management is a huge issue right now. And so this process is a big piece of the performance metric piece. Looking at the regional trends, but certainly we want to start to identify specific bottlenecks and congested areas within the region. So now we're getting down to the roadway level and identifying specific locations and prioritizing those locations. As we start to then dive into those locations, we need to try to understand what's causing the congestion. Is this, you know, just a lot of vehicles on the roadway? Is it during, you know, commuting times? Is it due to crashes or incidences like on I-81? Or are there other events that are affecting congestion on those roadways? And then to start to brainstorm some of the strategies that are applicable to that, which will involve a lot of coordination here moving forward with the DOT and with our local local towns and municipalities in the region. And another important piece, I know Federal Highways has really been pushing, I talk about performance metrics, is keeping track of the impacts of our past investments. And we have a lot of new data available. Some of it I'll talk here. As we complete transportation projects, we want to see what impact they had. Did they make a difference? Did they solve the congestion problem? And kind of highlight some of our success stories as we move forward. For this particular round, and I'm going to stress again, it's a congestion management process. So what we're trying to do here is just establish a procedure to go through the data, to evaluate data, and to make sure that this is repeated over time. This isn't a one-time document. It's an evolving process. So as we hear input, certainly from the public and from other stakeholders, I think Matt will continually adjust some of his priorities and continually, integrate this into the long-range transportation plan moving forward. For this first round of the CMP, I want to do a couple things. Is we wanted to really make sure that we did some public involvement outside of the traditional long-range planning process, because when he does the long-range transportation plan, there's so many issues being discussed. So congestion is a certainly important piece, but again, it gets mixed in. We wanted to pull that out, have its own separate public outreach, and give the public a little, more of a concentration on identifying these congestion issues. We wanted to certainly put together what we thought were the priority congestion locations. We're calling that like our CMP network. These are a combination of corridors and intersections that, appeared to be of the highest priority. And this is probably something the public, and as we put the document out, we're intending the public to take a look at some of these priorities and provide their input back to see what they feel about this, what we're missing. And so we can, adjust and evaluate why we didn't maybe reflect some of those priorities through our current process. And we want to develop some mapping and some tools that are available for the MPO that they can use moving forward to visualize a lot of this data. So I'll talk a little bit about the public outreach. If some of you weren't already involved, an interactive website was put together, and Matt had put that out. When was the time frame for that public outreach? Was that back in the January, February time frame? I'm forgetting now.
So it was a little earlier. It was like November, December.
Oh gosh, time.
Yeah, 23.
Time rolls quick, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. But that had some questions, but on the right-hand side was really the powerful piece. And we're seeing it in all kinds of public engagement across the country, is the interactive map. And for people to put comments on a map, we get a lot of input that way, even outside of the meetings like this. So that was an important tool. And you can see we got a lot of dots of where people thought congestion was, where there were improvement ideas, over about close to 700 different comments on congestion. And this played a really important role. I'm going to talk a little bit about data. Certainly that was a big piece of this congestion management process, is leveraging some of the new data that's available. But the public comments really helped, combine with that data to come up with some of the regional priorities within the three counties. Okay, so I've hinted at the priority locations. Certainly, again, that's a big piece of the document. I kind of hinted at this, that we had done some work. Matt's on through his long-range plan updates, which happen every 4 to 5 years. We take a look at some congestion issues, so we kind of had that as a starting point. We acquired a lot of new data, and specifically GPS travel time data. So this is data from vehicles or from apps that people are using, and they report back, and all that information becomes millions of observations of travel time. And there's a lot of data tools available and platforms that can be used to kind of leverage and report on that data. For the Maryland side, we have the West Maryland DOT actually purchases the travel time data. So for Washington County, we had that data available for historic years. For West Virginia, they don't purchase it right now, so we had to actually purchase that data from a provider called INRIX. So as part of the project was actually purchasing this data and using some of the INRIX modules to kind of open up all that travel time data. So think of this as every travel times on most roadway segments, the key roadway segments for every day, for every hour. So you can start to see, you can look at different travel times, and you can start to compare travel times maybe during peak periods or certain hours versus off-peak periods, and you can kind of see if there's a big difference. You can kind of start to see that maybe these are congested areas. So there's different metrics that we put together to try to look at that. I have one here called travel time index. It's a popular metric where you're comparing peak versus off-peak travel times to kind of come up with your congestion bottlenecks. I mentioned the public comments. So we took the data analysis, did a bunch of data analyses, brought the public comments in, took a look then and kind of, there were times where the data was showing congested spots, but the public wasn't saying much, and kind of took visual observations and saw there are issues with some of the data. Some of the data is at a longer segment, so you can't really understand where the congestion is, or if it's based on just a few vehicles at a stop sign, because we don't have the volumes built into that. So you have to kind of digest some of the information, and that's where the public insights help. And certainly our stakeholder insights too. We had a stakeholder committee, an opportunity for them to kind of review and offer what they thought were, high priority congested locations. So that led to what many have seen probably through the congestion management report was the initial set of, we had corridor locations in each of the counties that we thought were the priority congestion, either the highest congestion locations, and we had intersections that we noted in each of the counties too, that were the highest priority. And all of these are included in mapping tools that we have. So that was a big piece here, is the priority data map link that Matt had shared out during the public comment. And in the left side here is that data map where you can actually view our priority corridors that have been set up, some of the other congested intersections, review the public comments, and we let you see some of the data. There's a lot of different data layers. We didn't want to overwhelm those who want to look at the data. So we don't have all of it there, but we have some of the key data items there to look at. Along with that, for the priority corridors, we allow some kind of if you select on a corridor, some additional information comes up on these, which I'll highlight here in the next few slides. Now this slide was added here, why was my comment not a priority? Certainly there are a lot of comments where maybe we haven't designated that particular corridor as a priority at this particular time. And that probably resulted in that there weren't a lot of comments at a specific location, and the data didn't show a significant amount of traffic congestion there. Now, again, I admit the data is not always perfect, and I think that's why we go through this public comment process, is to start to let people see what came out of this process, and then either weigh in and see what we're missing, and then Matt can continually adjust the CMP process to kind of understand why maybe certain locations were missing, and we can kind of reflect that in the future, or better interpret the data in different ways. A next part of the CMP, which is a difficult piece that many regions struggle with, is trying to assess what types of strategies or projects are needed at those corridors or intersections. And there's a couple of ways you can do it. First of all, you can do a separate study at that location, or work with some of your local stakeholders in evaluating it. But as first step, what we just try to do is see what other types of data out there that can help us understand a little bit more about that corridor location, and maybe why there's congestion there. So certainly looking at some of the crash data will give you some influence of whether that could be causing some of the congestion issue. There are other tools here on the lower right-hand corner where we can start to look at that corridor and understand how congestion varies throughout the day. So I said, we have this hourly information, so we want to take advantage of that. Is it congestion happening just during a PM peak hour? Is it during the AM, or is it a longer term congestion? So it lets us see as kind of duration. We start to look at some of the land use information, truck volumes. Certainly freight is a big player here on some of the congestion that's occurred in the region. And some new data, certainly on the Maryland side, on some intersection tools that are available that take the travel time data and actually apply it to an intersection and understand which turning movements are giving trouble at the intersections, whether a left turning movement, things like that. So some of these are really some great tools that are going to become more prevalent in the future as this CMP evolves, and I think will really help in narrowing down strategies or opportunities for future projects. Certainly, we want to think about, when we think about strategies, think about a strategy toolbox, and think about. I know we have the West Virginia DOT, Maryland DOT actively involved because signal, for example, signal technology is a big important strategy moving forward and looking at a lot of these congested locations with limited dollars. We can't always just keep building out and building extra lanes. So taking advantage of some of the new technology for signal timing is real important. I know we've gotten some comments already that maybe we haven't emphasized some of the other multimodal opportunities enough, like transit and bike ped. So we need to continue to think about those as potential solutions for different corridors as we move forward. And then again, we've taken a first crack with some of these sheets at looking at some of the initial strategies at a high level. Some of the corridors we have identified have already been studied. Some of them already have projects underway or completed recently. So we've noted all of that. And the other ones where there hasn't been a study and there hasn't been a project, we need to take a look at it even beyond some of the initial strategies we had. And I think that's where we have this corridor visioning process. I think the intent is to kind of take a look at that corridor, work with some of the localities and with the DOTs, and kind of assess, what makes sense for that particular corridor. In some cases, there may not be a strategy needed. If you're in a downtown area, you may expect a certain amount of congestion, and there's limited opportunities to really do things. So there may be some limitations on what you can do, but we want to at least take a look moving forward at these corridors in more detail. I mentioned at the beginning that with the performance metrics that we also want to monitor our completed projects. What you do need, though, is historical data, so you can look at what it was like before and then what it was like after. So we had limited information, certainly on the West Virginia side, to do that, but we were able to take a look at a few locations. I think in Inwood, there certainly was a significant investment with the new roundabouts coming in, and kind of looking at one of the things we did was look at kind of the congestion before that project was in play and then after that project was in play. And we really saw the huge benefits that project had. And I think these are the types of things that we want to continue to monitor and keep track of, and maybe even highlight in Matt's long-range transportation plan moving forward. Highlight these case studies of what we've already built. So we don't always want to forget about what our investments are, but we want to highlight some of the impacts that they had. So moving forward, I emphasize it is a process. So this is, if someone feels that we're missing something, that's okay, because this isn't a one-time, even though there's a report here, the report is kind of for Matt too, just to kind of show how the data was put together. But the goal here is just to continually to evolve this congestion management process on a cycle that can feed the long-range transportation plan, to continue to reevaluate and reach out to local stakeholders and the public to get your viewpoints on congestion priorities in the region. And that's it. That's a quick overview of the congestion management process. And so this is one of the, one of the ways that we're looking for any questions or comments on the CMP. And I think, Matt, we've gotten 4 or 5 comments already that we're going to take a look at here as we finalize the CMP. And any more that comes up through the June 20th, we'll put those together and adjust the process.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and thanks for that presentation. Yeah, we're happy to take comments, and as Dan said, we've received some. We're taking the comments officially through June 20th. You can email myself, you can contact us through our website. Although, as Dan said, the hope and goal of this is that this is going to be a living, breathing document. So we can say as public servants, public comment period kind of never ends, right? But this is just for the development of this work. And I can share that some of the comments that we've received to date are concerns in West Virginia, concerns with traffic light signalization on West Virginia 45 and Apple Harvest Drive, which we do mention in the plan. We actually received a comment today in Maryland with concerns about Downsville Pike running south from the West Oak Ridge area past the new Conair Distribution Center and further down south. And then we also received some comments about wanting to make sure that we're properly highlighting public transit and especially passenger commuter rail in and around the Harpers Ferry area for MARC and Amtrak, looking at ways to alleviate some of the congestion on US 340 between Harpers Ferry and the Frederick County line. So we will have those comments and responses as part of the final document. We'll actually have those up front, I believe, in Appendix A. But that being said, I will say for our MPO that we have because of the 2 chips we have on our shoulder have to do with each of our states that we serve relative proximity to the capital. So in Maryland, we represent Western Maryland, which is the furthest away from Annapolis, and then in West Virginia, we represent the Eastern Panhandle, which is the furthest away from Charleston. So one of the hopes, and as we continue to work with our state partners, is to continue to highlight the congestion needs that our areas respectively have. And so as projects are getting programmed, as they're getting planned, as they're getting implemented to address congestion statewide, to do what we can to make sure that our congestion unique to our area is being addressed.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the public involvement piece of this is real important because sometimes on the data side, these roads don't look that bad when you compare to other regions of the state, either of the states probably. And so whether it's for a grant application or for something else, being able to stress the concerns from from your the local population over some of these locations like I-81 and being emphasized that everyone feels it's a concern. Businesses feel it's a concern. We can show on our maps here with us that we got the dots all over I-81. So someone in Maryland may not see the data show up as as bad as their freeways, but it is a local concern, and it's another way to emphasize that. So
yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, this is kind of the end of the formal presentation, but we're happy to take any questions or comments from those of you joining us. If there's any desire to go out, and showcase the story map that I mentioned earlier, or the data web map, I did put links to both of those in the chat, and we'd be happy to pull those up and showcase those if anybody's interested. Okay. Did you? Oh, are you? I think you're muted, Jim. Are you saying something? Oh,
I was just seeing if anybody else stepped up since I'm on the work group, but I have some comments that I'll send to you. I just wrote on the pages that I didn't say at the last thing, so I'm having trouble getting them to load here, but I'll get them out to you today. Just a couple things just mentioned on some in the appendix when you had like kind of the little graphics on each of the congested projects in Washington County. There's a couple things where you'll say like sidewalks exist, but they're limited in some of those spots. And those are some areas that we've identified as where we need some new sidewalks improvements. For example, over at Long Meadow intersection with the Eastern Boulevard, there's no sidewalks on the one side, and there's people that walk there in the road and stuff. So I would just make some adjustments there, like say limited sidewalks exist or something like that in those. And then I mentioned about that section on I-81 that talked about Maryland highways, you know, always being 100% reliable. And that's the gross thing. I see that's still in the draft, but that's something we're going to relook at. Is that correct? There's a page.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be able to take that out because those are federally required performance measures. So, I mean, we can, that if it's not in there, that's the first thing they're going to ask about. So it's, I mean, again,
but
we
that's
could
for
talk.
that's for the entire state, right? That's not I-81.
That is I-81.
That section on
That's
page,
all.
page
That's all 12
19?
linear miles of I-81 in Maryland. Yeah.
You're talking about the federal reliability measures
Yes.
Yeah,
that they look good. Yeah. I mean, this is an issue, and not just here, but in other regions that we're dealing with, is that the federal measures for some areas make things look better than certainly was perceived, or what many feel of as congestion in their region. So, and it's a challenge. It's been a challenge even with some of the grant applications, because they want to see the reliability measures, and you put it there and it doesn't look like a problem. And it's not happening as frequently enough to show up in that measure. That's really what it comes down to. And that's a concern of why I mentioned you nearly need to, bring in all the other input that you're receiving from businesses and locals to kind of emphasize. And but yeah, I know what you're looking at, Jim, and I mean, it was shocked us when we first looked at it 3 or 4 years ago. We're like, well, this isn't right. And then,
well, maybe it's in the narrative of that section that we could kind of better express that out, because even there's another section where you have 25% truck traffic, but we've seen numbers well over that. I haven't seen 25% listed for a long time. I'm trying to remember where that was. I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I remember you said that. We did go back to the count data. I thought they were able to verify. We may have made some adjustments, but they didn't. I don't know if they got up to the numbers that you said. But
and then just another thing going off 81. I had mentioned this at our other meeting that we had concerns there on Morgan's Avenue on Long Meadow Road. When at the intersection, that is one comment I got from my members when I sent out the list to everybody, was they suggested just making that I-81 to Marsh Pike instead of I-81 to Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah, that's a possibility. We went back. The data actually wasn't showing it as congested, so that was kind of confusing to us. And the intersection at Marsh actually looked pretty good. So we're kind of like, what could be causing this, or what's causing the congestion? And as we went back from that intersection, we did see that's a rail crossing there. Actually, we're thinking that the rail crossing may be causing some of the congestion. It's not happening frequent enough that the data's capturing it as an average.
I actually think what it is the right turn lane there on the Marsh Pike. There's a large amount of cars that turn right on the Marsh Pike, and they can't, when there's 3 or 4 cars in queue to go straight across that intersection, you can't get to the right turn lane. So you're stuck backed up, because there's that newer house that was built too close to the road there, to where they didn't hold enough right of way to extend that right turn lane. I think that's what's happening, because there's a lot of traffic that wants to go right, but you can't get to the right turn lane because it only takes a couple cars to block that access. I don't know. We were backed up to Keena Road, so that's pretty far, but I get what you're saying there.
Are both those roads county roads?
Yeah, those are county roads.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like
And
an
Matt,
intersection reconfig.
yeah, I remember actually I was commissioner when that house started being built, and I was like, why did we let them dig right where why didn't we make them sit back farther? We've already said that we had to widen that road. We had that intersection in our CTP plan or our CIP plan, and they just missed it when it came in and didn't have, the house was already started, so they let it finish, of course, but they should have set that back more. Last thing, I don't know if we could get this, but there, you have that I don't know, kind of looks like a heat map in the appendix. Talks about the congestion over the times a day for all the different projects, that we listed. It's the last part of the appendix. The for Clifton Drive in Williamsport, would we have that map on one of the times that I-81 shut down versus just a standard? I guess that's the overall. Does that data, can you like pick a
Yeah,
time
we
when
can
I-81
if
shut down
if
and
there
show
are
that?
some certain time period. Well, I can't guarantee because
It's
we don't have
this
coverage on every roadway. But we
that.
may, yeah, I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
But we have it on a lot of roadways. So first we can see if we have it on Clifton coverage. If we do, we should be able to pull any day or hour you want. So if there's a certain time period that something happened and you want to know, let us know and we'll pull that information and do a plot like that or a different map that kind of visualizes how bad it was.
I mean, it would be, if you just had like a bubble on that document said, I-81 shuts down about 20 times, a year, due to accidents, and this is what happens.
That's a good point.
Here's an example what happens
Mhm.
as something like that, so they kind of understand that that's I don't know what that number
Yeah.
is, but I imagine Scott Hobbs or somebody at the county would have a good sense of the average times that shuts down a year.
Are you going to
Mhm.
include, will you write that down in your comments? Are you going to include that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll write that down.
Yeah,
I'll
write that down so then we'll make sure we get that in there.
And
Hey,
and
this
we
is
can,
Sean
send
from
out
M.
yeah,
This is
and
Sean
we
from
can.
M. Sorry.
Oh,
Matt, go ahead. You go.
no, Sean. Sorry, you go right ahead.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm Sean Marcelino from Maryland State Highway. So I think this conversation that we're having right now is really, it's a good conversation to have because I think if you make these minor tweaks to the plan, you'll be able to then go to your commissioners and say, this should be on our priority letter as a, potential thing to get funded by the state, specifically if it's on a state roadway. And then you can use this plan to enhance what your ask is. So that's just coming from the state highway side. I think this conversation is very smart, and this plan has a lot of potential to help bolster the county's claims.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah, we can do the. I guess jumping back into Jim to two of your comments. So we can have that I-81 sees truck traffic of up to as much as, right, and we could put in the high number of the range, and then we could also put. I mean, reliability is it's tough because I get why the feds talk about it, but it's like, so if every day for a year it takes you 30 minutes more to get between Hagerstown and Martinsburg, right? That's 100% reliable. Well, that doesn't mean, that's functioning at optimal conditions, right? It just means you always know you're going to be a half hour late in that scenario.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's maybe in the narrative of that page, we could just kind of flesh that out because, people reading that know 81, the where we at, are going to say that makes no sense. And I get what
Yeah,
you're saying.
we do mention that in there. We do bring up the issue that this is against, what many have viewed in the state. Yeah, and that we may not be capturing the it may happen a little less frequently than the federal performance measure, but the impacts are large. Yeah, and I think what you're getting at, if we can show some of those impacts a little bit better, it puts kind of emphasizes it.
So I think, oh, never mind. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Just looking at the visuals.
I'm done.
Or
Yeah,
yeah, or maybe even, yeah, I wonder. I'll go back and reread the paragraph. Sorry, Dan, I must have missed that, but I wonder if like that could be juxtaposed with like one of the NREX like PTI graphs for ID1 or a part of it. And maybe we can take a look at it. So. All right. Thank you, Jim. Let's see. So we heard from Sean. Ken, anything you want to say from West Virginia side?
Sure, Matt. I was just thinking, just thanks for getting things updated as far as the improvements made in Inwood and showing that in the plan so that we can better prioritize the improvements that are needed in the future.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for all the hard work.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. All right. Anybody else who's on the call? I mean, our guests have any other comments or questions at this time? And if not, please, after you've had a chance to think about maybe what was shared today, you can email the comments. This presentation itself, the PDF that was that we went over, that's 20 some slides, that's up on our website as well. I guess that's it. So yeah, please have those comments to us by June 20th. Jim, we'll look for your comments and we'll get those incorporated in the final version. And again, any questions or comments, just please reach out. And thank you all for your time.